Have you ever wondered if supplements are really good for you and how to tell the good ones from the bad ones? Sometimes more is not necessarily better. And today's guest, Dr. Donese Worden, who is a naturopathic medical doctor, is going to talk with us about that and the 7 pillars of health and how we can check in with ourselves. So welcome, Dr. Worden.
Thank you so much, Susan. I look forward to this conversation. You're a great interviewer and a great person, so this will be hopefully very valuable for your listeners.
Well, you are a messenger. You are a messenger for good health. And you've got the combination of the medical, the naturopathic, and science-based. I mean, are you a scientist, a literal scientist? Or I know that you study science significantly.
No, well, I'm a researcher. I collaborate with major institutions on research, mostly in oncology and immunology, but mostly oncology. So I'm not just a practicing physician, I'm a researcher as well. That puts me in a unique position. Plus, to the point of your title today, I formulated and been part of teams to take some of the top supplements out there in the industry for years that are in the big names. Can't say who they are because I, worked on it.
Understood.
But I do know the industry, and it's a problem. There are many bad players in the industry for supplements, and that's a message that people need to hear. And I say, if you're going to take a supplement, you should know that it's been tested and that it's accurate. And we'll talk about that in detail, Susan, but it's important and people need to know just because it's being sold on the shelf doesn't mean it's safe or that it even has what it says on the bottle.
Yeah. So how do people know? I mean, I think everybody makes the assumption that, if it's on the shelves in the store, someone has approved it. But we all know there's no approval process for supplements. So how do you know the good ones from the bad ones?
Right. They are regulated as foods. They're not regulated like a pharmaceutical is. So as foods, that's how a lot of I would say bad players can get away with it. And there are things, if the FDA starts hearing problems with it, they will have warning letters, their claims. That's called the Federal Trade Commission. You can't say this, you can't say that. There are some regulation around it, but there's so much that they can't keep up with it. And buying it on the shelf, you really don't know what you're getting. And I would venture to say that the majority of what's being sold out there is at best not good. And I mean at best. And here's what I mean is that if it says on the label, you may have 100 milligrams of this, whatever it is, let's say CoQ10, 100 milligrams on the bottle. And you go, that sounds great. But if we did actual testing on it, it may not even be CoQ10, maybe something that looks kind of like it. It may not have 100 milligrams in it. It could have been stored in some hot, big warehouse and it's lost all of its efficacy. And it could have bacteria, molds, and fungi growing in there. And some of the supplements are being found to have pharmaceuticals in them. So people feel a difference, but it's a pharmaceutical in there. So how do you know? Well, I spend an exorbitant amount of time. I probably have 40 different companies that I utilize in my practice and for my clients and my patients. And I, even though I have good players, the best companies that I can find, I still make them every batch. That means every time we get a shipment in on that batch, they have to show me that they tested not just the raw materials at the beginning. I want to know what it looks like once they put it together and it's ready to be shipped. It's called the in-batch run. They have to show me they tested for all those things I'm talking about: heavy metals, lead, mercury, fungi, all the antimicrobials, that it actually has in there what it says. It's a lot of time, a lot of effort. All I can say is the ones that I utilize, I know that I have a full-time person. That's all they do is check quality control. You as a consumer, if you're going to take something every day, you have the right to call that manufacturer and ask them to send you a certificate of analysis. That's at least a first step of the version of my quality control of what I require. But if you get the C of A, if they tell you, no, we can't send you to, it's proprietary, that's not true. And if they're doing the testing like the good companies do, they should say, wow, great. Yes, we would love to send that to you. Now, you've got to do that on every batch because one batch could be okay and the next one not. But at least know that whether that company would be willing to do it for you, at least that's a step in the right direction.
You bring up so many points that, like you were doing this because this is what you do for a living.
Use it as my medicine.
Average person who's just going to a supplement store or their grocery store and or their drugstore, and they're looking at the shelf, stage one, write to them and ask for that letter.
That's right.
Know that that letter isn't necessarily going to be appropriate for the batch that's on the shelf.
Correct.
And even if they had it for the batch that's on the shelf, we don't know how those supplements have been stored. As in the example of, it could have been in a hot warehouse and now they've disintegrated, so to speak.
That's right.
Not what they are.
That's exactly right.
At the point that they were produced.
Exactly.
That's a lot of steps to go through.
That's a lot of points of steps, like you're saying, that where something could go wrong. That's why, if you work with somebody like me or a physician that's going to the steps that I am, most don't, I will tell you that. They just don't have the time. You're not going to hire a full-time person to do it. I'm just because I'm a researcher and because I know the industry, I know it. I know I have the obligation to make sure that I'm making them do the testing, even the good companies, because something could get by them sometime. Yeah. So, it's just, and I get it directly from them. So I know they just made it, it's shipped to me, and I know how it's stored. So I've done the best steps that I can for the quality control. But if you don't know, if a company says no, I say choose a different company. Yeah. Choose a different company or find a website that is doing that kind of testing and analysis.
What I find fascinating is I was having some health issues a few years ago, and I went to a naturopath, and we ran all kinds of blood work way beyond what the typical physician would run. And she put me on several supplements. I was spending probably $500 a month. And those supplements were sold right there at her facility. And she's very well known in the area, very well thought of.
Yes.
Very well credentialed. And yet after, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 months, I saw absolutely no difference other than my declining bank balance every time I went in and spent a fortune on these supplements. But when I was doing that, Dr. Worden, I never thought to ask the questions that you've just raised.
Right.
So I think, again, we use the general, go to the drugstore, the supplement store, your grocery store. But here I was buying the supplements that were recommended and available at the naturopath that I was seeing. And it never occurred to me that maybe there was something not up to par with those supplements.
And that physician, no matter how credentialed and great they are, they don't know the industry if they haven't formulated like I have and been in the industry, been on the other side to look. They don't know to ask. They just assume it's okay too. And maybe she selected the right things for you, but they didn't work because of the quality of the product. Now let's go the other way, is that you can do all the testing in the world. You can do this, but if you're having to spend that much money per month, I feel that you haven't gotten to the root of the problem. Anything that you take, it should be just a few basics. If you're in good health, there's a few basics that I think most people need that would be helpful. Outside of that, we that work in integrative medicine should be saying, okay, we've got a problem. I've identified it. This is what should support it. But if you just throw a bunch of supplements at somebody and hope they get better, unfortunately, I see that a lot in my world of integrative medicine, both MDs that are integrative and naturopaths. They just do a lot of testing called functional medicine. They do this, they throw a bunch of supplements and hope somebody gets better.
Yes.
I don't work that way. I have to know a real specific reason that I can look at and know that this is the right thing to do. I'm about fixing the problem, not about masking a symptom. That maybe you take a supplement and you feel better, but did you actually fix anything?
Yeah.
So it's a different mindset because of the research that I do and the researcher in me. I want to know what's causing it. And if you're on more than at most 6, 7 things. You're on way too many. That has to go through your liver and your kidney. We don't know how they interact. Some things we do, but a lot of it we don't. Anytime you're on 6 things, we really can't tell whether they're synergistic or they're contradicting each other, counteracting each other.
Well, yeah,
we
and during that time frame, there was adding to. Well, we'll add this, we'll take this away, we'll see if it makes a difference, and kind of like throwing spaghetti up against the wall. It wasn't making a difference.
Right.
And truly, at that point, when I saw her, she said the only missing gap here is I knew that I had sleep apnea. And the problem, I wasn't sleeping. Well, you know, your health goes downhill if you're not sleeping. And we collectively said, I think I need a new sleep doctor.
Okay.
And the one that I was looking at was one that she was actually thinking of also, because we're all in the same area.
Yeah.
I went to the sleep doctor. They ran more extensive tests, and they found that in an 8-hour span of being in bed, I was getting maybe 1 hour sleep.
Oh goodness. Yeah.
So we finally
supplement is going to fix that. Supplement's not going to fix that.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, so it is, and I know that you work both with natural medicine and pharmaceutical medicine that combined with your expertise in testing, research, science-based. I think you give an opportunity for diagnosis and healing in a way that's very unusual. Too bad you were in Arizona and I'm in Seattle, but do you work with people virtually?
I do. I have clients all over the world. I mean, UK, China, you name it. So they're called clients. They can't be official patients, but everything that I would be doing and the testing that needs to be done, I guide everybody through. So I would say more than half my practice right now is clients from all over the world. So,
and isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, the world has changed so much that we're not tied to a geographical area anymore. Right. And as a messenger, like now, when this is being seen by people around the world, they're getting this information no matter where they're hearing it, where they're if they're on their phone, they're sitting in front of their computer. It doesn't matter what country they're in, they're hearing why we need to check on supplements. And the second thing that I brought up when I introduced you is I know sometimes people overload, and I might have been doing that even though it was prescribed. But I think about something like vitamin A. Well, yeah, there's a very real need sometimes to take vitamin A, but if you take too much, it's harmful. And that's the same thing with any vitamin or supplement. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So first of all, I would say, why are you deficient in vitamin A? First of all, why is it deficient? You should be getting enough from your food. Is it leaky gut? Where's the problem? Why are you deficient? How did you test for that deficiency? The best way is in white blood cells. That means it's a blood draw. It grows in a dish with white blood cells. And then we know what's getting inside the cells, not what's floating around in the bloodstream. It might look like you're high in vitamin A floating around in the bloodstream because you took it, but that doesn't mean it got inside the cells. So the correct way of testing is it getting inside the cells? Why are you deficient? Where's the problem? Now, vitamin A, D, E, and K, those are lipid soluble. So you bring up the point, most vitamins, you take too much, you're just going to urinate it out. And as we say, expensive urine, right?
Yeah.
But A, D, E, and K, they're fat soluble. Your body can't break it down. It's hard on the liver and they can get to dangerous levels. So more is not better in the case of those. But again, if we've got a deficiency, why do we have a deficiency? Not here's the supplement, take it and hope you get better.
Yeah. I have an actual little horror story along this line. Is I was at a dinner party and there were lots of different foods. It was like we all brought like the one dish that we wanted. Yeah. So there's lots of different kinds of foods. And a friend of mine that was there took something. I said, what are you taking? And he said, well, I just have digestive issues. And if I take this supplement, then it helps. And he took like a handful of whatever it was. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. And everybody's sitting around the dining room table eating, and all of a sudden he was across from me and I saw him start to kind of like go over and act weird. And I thought he was having a stroke. I called 911. I said, call 911. It turned out that, nothing was ever traced back to what he took because he refused to go to the emergency room. I thought he was having a stroke because I saw that his face, one side of his face dropped. He was like fainted and then was really clammy and sweaty. And by the time the EMTs got there, then he was sitting up, but his blood pressure was low. And it's always been on my mind that it was those supplements that caused it. Because like I said, he didn't take like one or two, like he took a handful because there were lots of different foods and he didn't want to have digestive problems. And, who knows what that did to his system.
Right. I mean, there's no way to go back and know, like you said, but when the face is drooping, that is a neurological issue. And it could have been from the foods itself, because if you eat foods that cause inflammation, we do IgG testing, not food allergy testing, skin prick, but food sensitivity. Those foods alone can cause inflammation and cause clots and cause that kind of thing. But a digestive enzyme before you eat helps you get the nutrition out of the food, helps you digest it. I don't mind that for most people. If it's in the budget for them and a good digestive enzyme is not expensive, that I don't mind. But some people without a digestive enzyme, while you're fixing the root of the problem, can have those kinds of problems. So I don't know what was going on with him, but there was definitely a gastro-brain connection, that brain-gut connection that happened from something. And that needed to be explored. And a handful of supplements is usually not going to take care of that. There was something underlying that wasn't found.
Yeah. Well, I know we're going to talk about the 7 pillars of health, and maybe during that time frame, you can talk about the second brain. We've got the brain that's in our head, and we got the brain that's in our gut. How does that fit in with the 7 pillars of health?
Yeah. Well, the microbiome, those bugs, we're mostly bugs. If we look at our genetics, our DNA and bugs, we're mostly bugs. It's not us anyway. So I say, be nice to your bugs. We need to know the bugs. We're learning a lot about it. There's a lot more we need to learn, but we're seeing certain ones that may be used in cancer treatment someday. The brain gut connection is real. We know when one's upset, the other one is. In fact, your neurotransmitters, your serotonin, your dopamine, all those things that make us feel good, sleep good, all those things, they're made in your gut. They're made there and they're modulated. And so is your immune system. So if your gut health is not good, it's one of the main pillars. There are 7 pillars of health that I talk about, but the gastrointestinal is one of the most important. Health begins and ends there, because your brain chemistry, your immune system, which, as we all know, affects everything. Gut health is very, very important. So a great way to judge if we're getting into the 7 pillars, your gut health is take a look at your poo. And I'm going to call them bowel movements, or poo, but people don't want to talk about it, but we need to talk about it. And they end up laughing and thinking it's a great thing to talk about. But normal, most people don't know what normal is. And I talk a lot about common isn't normal. Just because it's common, everybody around you is tired. Everybody around you has GI issues. It doesn't mean it's normal. So let's talk a minute about normal. Normal bowel movement should be about as long from your wrist to your elbow, that long. And it should be about as big around as your wrist. Okay. In the middle, it should be a soft log. It should definitely be a log. It should be soft and easily passed. It shouldn't smell bad. Sometimes, according to what you ate, it may be a little off, but most days, not smelling bad. And it should happen once a day. Anything outside of that is not normal, in my opinion. And people get better when we have that happen. Now, what causes it not to be? A lengthy parasites, leaky gut, a bacterial infection. That's where the testing comes in. Why are you not having that? But if you're not having that and your doctor tells you, oh, it's okay for you to go to the bathroom every 3 or 4 days, it's because they're constipated. It's not normal. It should be once a day. And that gastric health, imperative for everything else.
Yes. Yeah. I remember when you did the 10-minute talk in the Genius Network that we both belong to, and you went through the example of what you just did, and you raised your arm and people were gasping.
Yeah. And Susan, they still talk about what it was that 8 months ago. They still are talking about it. It's still in the chat, or it still comes up. They're going, oh, mine have gotten better. Oh, it's still a topic of Let's talk about it. It's a
Well,
fun.
and it's because you opened that door.
Yeah.
You know, that's not a topic that most people talk about. It's like, are you constipated, or do you have diarrhea, or do you have
that's right.
normal bowel movements? But nobody talks about the length of it, the width of it,
That's
the
right.
smell of
That's
it.
right. Yeah. And a lot of people don't look. They say, I don't know. And I say, well, you better know. You better start, because there's lots of information in that.
Yeah.
that we can see. So yeah, very important. And
so that's, and what you just said, I mean, that's a very easy thing. We don't need a doctor to determine if something's right or wrong.
That's right.
We just look at our bowel movements every day and see how things are and how our gut is feeling. A very dear friend of mine who has now passed had eczema from the time that she was about 6 years old. And we would travel together, and what she went through with this eczema, and she would scratch, and the eczema would bleed, and she would put on certain clothes and then find like, no, she couldn't wear that because it was upsetting the eczema. And we knew each other for years before she shared that she only had a bowel movement maybe once a week.
Yeah. Do you know that the cells inside your gut wall lining are the same as your skin? So embryologically, when we form, we literally flip wrong side out. So when people have any kind of skin issue, any, the first place I look is the gut, because if the skin's upset, especially eczema, psoriasis, things like that, and if it's autoimmune, all that, but it all is connected to the gut. And if the skin's upset, so is the inside of the gut wall lining. So there's lots of signs that our bodies give us, but with eczema, probably got put on the inhibitors and autoimmune and all the medications, which make the gut health worse. And it's just this vicious cycle when we have lots of hints our body gives us. And that's the 7 pillars. I'm saying you should be checking in these 7 areas all the time. And don't think it's common. Know what normal is. And if you're not normal, find the root of the problem.
So let's all learn how to become Sherlock Holmes.
That's right.
Of our body. Okay. Let's go over those 7 pillars.
That's right. And Susan, too, soon, Dean in our group, and I have a book, as you know, these kinds of books that we do, that will be coming out, and be glad it will be a free ebook. And we'll get, if they go to my website, we'll give it to everybody and we'll get a little more in detail on this. But
wonderful.
What are the 7 pillars that you really need to be paying attention to? You mentioned one already: sleep. Personal experience, sleep, your body, your bowel movement, which we've already gone over. We'll go past that one as far as GI, your energy level, your mental state. How is your brain thinking? Your relationships in your life, because stress, cortisol, all those things that happen from bad relationships really affect our body. And then your spiritual connection. Don't forget about that. I'm not talking about going to church and religion and which one you belong to. I'm talking, do you feel spiritually connected? So when we learn what's common within those areas, and we do a self checkup once in a while, we get busy, we do, and we say, oh, I'll ignore that. But if you consistently kind of check in with yourself in the areas and say, how am I really doing? On a scale of 1 to 10, let's take sleep. What does normal sleep look like? It should be about 8 hours. Most people, there's variances, but 8 hours. And if you wear a wearable or something, you'll know you need a certain amount of REM sleep and deep sleep for you to repair your DNA, detox your brain, all the things that we know. Sleep is imperative. Normal sleep, you go to sleep okay, you stay asleep, and you wake up with good energy. That is a 10. Now, if you can't get to sleep, or you wake up in the middle of the night, or you wake up tired, you've got to find the root of the problem, like you did, Susan, right? There was something up. You had to dig deep to find what was wrong.
Yeah.
So that's normal sleep. Normal body. To me, normal body is you look in the mirror. It's not what your BMI is and all this stuff. You look in the mirror, you like what you see, and you go, good job. I look pretty good. I like it. I feel good. I'm strong. My balance is good. And I like my body. Yeah. That's important, right? If you're overweight or underweight, and don't obsess over those things. But the 10 is things are functioning well. You don't have any pain on movement. You're not restricted in your movement. Everything is working well. It feels good. And you like the way you look. That is the body marker.
Yeah. And I think all of us know what that feels like.
That's right.
And if we use that as our normal, as you say,
Yes.
what is normal?
That's right.
If we use that as our normal,
Yeah.
then anything other than that, we know something's off. It's not a 10.
And a lot of people try to use the age thing as an excuse. Well, I'm getting older. I'm getting older. No. I never let my patients, they learn right off the first time they say that. They never say it again because I say, no, you're never allowed. I have 90-year-olds. I have 99-year-olds that are still ballroom dancing. They're doing everything they want to do. They feel good. There's no pain. They've got energy. They're sleeping well. That's the way we're supposed to age.
Yeah.
I told the story, and this is probably a great time because we'll talk about energy next. My dad is 88. His wife is 91. They travel the world. My dad golfs 3 days a week, and 18 holes. They go to yoga. They do Pilates. They do all the things that 40-year-olds are not doing, right? And feel good. And they got caught. They went to a resort. It was a hot springs. She forgot her swimsuit, and they weren't not going to go in. So they waited till it got dark to where they thought everybody was gone. They went skinny dipping. They went skinny dipping, right? Both of them. He said, well, I'll go with you, hon. So they went skinny dipping. They got way too hot. They laid down on the bench, fell asleep. And of course they got caught. She's 91. He's 88. But guess what? They look good. They look good, first of all, didn't shock too many people, but they became the heroes of the resort because here they are at that age. Here they are at that age getting caught skinny dipping. That's the way we're supposed to age.
I love that.
Age is not an excuse. And, my parents had it. My parents were overweight, or they had hypertension, or they had diabetes. It runs in my family. There aren't genes. Genetics is only a slight, at most 8 or 9% of whether you're going to express something. The epigenetics, your lifestyle, that's what turns on and off the good and bad genes. You are in control. I don't care what your parents had. I need to know it. I'll keep it in mind. It might be, I need to take a closer look on that, but it does not mean that you go down the same route as family. So there are no excuses. I
love that because I think, I don't hide it, and I've mentioned it at different times, but I'm 71 and thank you. But when something comes up, and it doesn't very often, but when something comes up, one of the things I will say is this my age.
Yeah.
Nope. And the doctors will say that no, you're a vibrant person.
That's right.
Whatever this is has nothing to do with how old you are. So I love that you were bringing that up for those of us who are going up in the numbers.
I'm an advocate. I've got 2 now that are that are older, that are in the hospital. And the problem is they go to the hospital, they see their age, and they immediately write them off. They just immediately write them off and just go, oh, we'll let them. My call is you treat them like a 24-year-old. It is, do not look at their age. Do not judge them by that. This is that vibrant, healthy person. There is something wrong. You need to work it up like they're 24. Do not be passing it off as age and just let them go. So, but it takes an advocate. It takes an advocate, or else you go to the emergency room, they look at your age and they go, well, okay, go see your primary care if you live past it.
Yeah.
And they don't do much. And if you're in other countries, and I won't mention them because but there are other countries that I have clients that are from there, and they won't even do the testing between like a 20-year-old to like 50. I've got women that are menopausal that are horribly suffering with their hormones. And before menopause, they've got menstrual issues. They can't get any testing. I have a client that is flying in 2 weeks for the meeting that you and I will be at.
Yes.
They are flying in from the UK because they can't get the CT scan, the CAT scan that needs to be done on her adrenal glands, because I know there's a problem there and it could be a very serious one. I've done the testing, I know, and I need a CAT scan. She's having to fly in to get that done to the US for me to.
Well, God love her for doing that. For taking the action that's needed to get the care that's required.
Right. That's right. Yeah. But here in the United States too, it'll be like, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. I'm going through that with another patient right now as a patient, and trying to go through Medicare, because I'm cash pay. is trying to get Medicare docs to do this. And they said, well, we have to do this before we do that because of insurance. I said, the patient will be dead by the time you do that. So I'm having to have cash pay, which thank goodness my cash pay prices are super cheap compared to insurance prices, but we shouldn't have to do that. It should be what's best for the patient. What does that patient need, regardless of age, race, the fluency, any of that? What is the best for the patient? But medicine's broken. It's really broken.
It is. It is. Well, with people like you, we're working towards fixing some of those things.
Yeah. Well, advocates to speak out, but it's moving that system. It's unfortunately those who can't afford to pay cash for good care, they're stuck in a really poor system right now.
When you were first starting to talk about this, the word that came to my mind was advocate, and then you used it because I was the advocate for both my mother and my husband and my father when they were going through whatever issues that led to their passing. And even without some of the systems, I mean, that goes back quite a few years, that we're dealing with now in the medical community, there was still a lot of disconnects where if we don't have somebody that's really looking at us holistically as a human being, and we're just a name on a chart with information, things get missed. And so having an advocate is so critical to be able to get the best care that we need.
It is. I mean, I think what would have happened. I know what would have happened if I hadn't been advocating for some of these patients. And they have a specialist, they'll have a cardiologist, and they don't look at anything else. And they have the hepatologist look at the liver. No one is talking to each other within the specialists, and the hospitalists are supposed to do that, but they're overworked and don't do it. If you even get one, nobody pulls the pieces together, not just in the hospital, in general care, Susan. Yes. So I will send patients to specialists, get insurance to pay for all the things that I need to see. And we have to push the button to get it done, but we get it done. But what's the best is that you've got to take all the information from all of this and pull it together to connect the dots. And that's what's not being done in medicine.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think I've heard you talk about in the Genius Network about building a team, which is what you were just outlining.
That's
where
right.
everybody is communicating with everybody else. And then ultimately, whether you as the patient is the advocate, or whether you need to have somebody else to be able to help with that, making sure that the team is all playing on the same side of the
I have. That's right. On oncology, especially, the patients sometimes they get to me right at the beginning, which is much easier. Then I build their team with those that I already work with, whether it's MD Anderson, City of Hope, oncologist people I know that we already know where we're going to go with it, and we work well together. But if they already have an oncologist, if we have one that will not listen to the patient, nor be willing to look at what we have to offer on all sides, and we fire them. I tell patients, when did we get this thought that you can't fire your doctor? Your doctor works for you. You're paying us for our information, our education, and our you're paying us for our expertise. You have the right to fire your doctor at any point in time. And the minute you don't feel listened to, you don't feel that they have your care, or they don't have time, or you feel like you're being slipped through, fire them, and you hire a new team.
Oh, I'm just going hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah as you say that. Going back to my mother's diagnosis, she had cancer of the colon. That her doctor never did a rectal examination. It could have been found long before it spread to where it did. And it was the family doctor. And she loved the family doctor. Like everybody went to the family.
They never
questioned anything. He wanted to put her in the hospital like the next day and do removal of that. And he said that the colon, she would have a, what is the bag called?
Colposcopy. She'll have
she will have that. And I was like, well, we need a second opinion to make sure that there isn't enough bowel to connect. And she was like, no, we can't question the doctor. He knows what's best for me. And I pulled her out. We took her to a different hospital. She was so angry with me, Dr. Worden.
Yes.
We had another doctor come in. He said, absolutely, we can reconnect the bowel. Nobody had done a liver or a lung scan on her before the surgery.
If metastasis before they start cutting. Yes.
And it had metastasized to her liver.
And they didn't need to put her through. I mean, you do some things to keep quality of life and hope for cure or remission or a steady of that. But I see that far too often. They start immediately surgical, cutting, cauterizing, all this, and they haven't looked. I require my patients to get a PET scan. I want to know if there's metastasis. How do you make decisions before you know that? But it's common. Susan, thank goodness she had you, but you know, you're not a doctor to know all this.
Well, yeah. And I don't know that she ever really got over what I did to her.
Right.
I think she got, ultimately that it was the best decision, but she was still horrified.
Right.
That we might have offended the family doctor.
The newer generations, as we all know, they're asked, they want to know, they want second opinions, which is good. Yes. But anybody, 50 and above still has this, oh, I don't want to offend my doctor. Now you need to be nice and not offend, but you have the right to a second opinion in any surgery or major decision. You always should get a second opinion, at least.
Yes.
One more. So
hallelujah.
You did it right. Well, and the others, let's go through these.
Yeah. So we have more pillars to go over.
That's right. So we did sleep, body, bowel movement. Your mother, if she had been looking, not to say, but maybe if she'd known what was normal bowel movement, she would have caught that something.
Absolutely. She was taking Metamucil.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to take anything to have a normal bowel movement. People say, oh, I have a normal bowel movement. And then my next question is, are you doing anything or taking anything to have that happen? Yes. And then they go, oh, yes, if I don't, I'm constipated. Well, you cut the fire, you turn the fire alarm off, but the fire's still going.
Yeah.
They didn't fix it. So good. All right. Energy levels, another one. A good energy level is you wake up with energy, you're clear, you're going through your day, mind is clicking, your body is good, you're not nervous, you're not anxious, but you've got good, controlled, focused, good energy, and your body's going, I'm ready, let's do this. You can get your workout in, your exercise, you can do anything that you want to do. And then when it's time to go to sleep at night, you wind down, the body's nice and calm and relaxed, and you get good sleep. So energy is something your body, and the problem is now everybody's kind of tired, Susan. Everybody's going, oh, I'm tired, and they just think it's common. Is it long COVID? Is it, all this? Is it just the stress? Yes, all these things play in, but it's a sign that the body has something not working well in it and needs to be supported. Maybe it's a short term, maybe it's a long term, or maybe there's something really bad, a cancer or an autoimmune, something that's causing that drop in that energy level. So adrenal glands that sit on top of your kidneys, they make cortisol and other stress hormones. And those hormones are good. They're not bad guys. We're supposed to have them to run from a bear and survive, but we're only supposed to ask those adrenal glands to kick in cortisol, get your eyes to dilate, your muscles to contract, and turn off your bowel movements. Now's not the time to have a poo if we're running from a bear. The libido gets shut down. All the things that we don't need to survive gets turned off so we can run from the bear. But we're only supposed to do that when there's a bear, maybe once every few months. Survival, right?
Yes.
Real survival. And then turn it off. Go back to eating berries and relaxing and doing your thing. Most people are stuck in survival mode. So all those things I just mentioned, digestion, libido, energy, sleep, all those things get turned off because you're telling your body you're in survival mode. And so we start thinking that this energy, either nervous energy, anxiety, or depression, or this just physical fatigue, is just normal in its own way. It is not. So is it the adrenal glands, which a lot of times they are part of the energy thing. Yes. And a lot of people have adrenal fatigue right now, a lot, from everything that's
that was some of the supplements that the doctor had me on was adrenals because I was tired, but it was because I wasn't sleeping. Not that I don't need the adrenal support. Exactly. But it was as you were calling, like a Band-Aid was being put over the wound that really wasn't being addressed.
And you might have needed the Band-Aid to keep the adrenals from shutting off, because if they shut off and you're not making those, now we've got a whole nother issue. So you needed support, but you finally found the root of the problem was that lack of sleep. So, all right. And then mental, let's talk about that. Is your brain wiring and firing? Can you think through clearly? Are you having trouble finding a word, or cognition. You're just saying, I can't think through it like I used to, or you have different times of day. Good mental is focused energy, connect the dots, and you're not grappling or struggling to think through information or process it. And it's not an aging thing. And if it is, what's going on? Yeah. Do we have some dementia, Alzheimer's? Because we're getting very good at really preventing a lot of those things. So if you're starting to struggle and you just say, well, it's age or it's stress right now, listening to your body, listening to your brain, there's a problem. Is it inflammation? Is there a genetic piece there that we need to know about? You don't wait. You don't wait. If you have a symptom, any symptom in any of the 7 pillars, if it lasts more than a week, or maybe at most 2, give it some time to try to correct. If you just had a death in the family or something that upset your entire whole system, right? Give it a couple of weeks. If it's not correcting, it is not to be ignored. And mental is one of those areas. Next is your relationships. I talked about that a little bit. We talk about getting rid of the bad things in our diet, sugar and all the things that we shouldn't. But what about the bad relationships? Because even though they might be family and we feel obligated and there's guilt and all those things that go to it, if they are not providing a support for you, if they are not helping you be in a good, positive place, then you may say, you've got to limit that time that you spend with those people. Negative energy from bad relationships will tear you down just as fast as having the flu. Okay. So just like with the doctors, fire the doctors, you need to fire some relationships as well. If they're not bringing positive, supportive energy to you, you need to very much limit how you spend time with those people. Or if we don't need them, you need to say goodbye.
Yeah, you bring up a couple of thoughts come up for me around that. I don't have any living family anymore. And I have a few very close friends, but certainly in the last 2 years, it's Zoom calls and phone calls, a lot of times. And so my family support comes from my animals. Yeah. We were talking about my service dog, Red, who you might see walking back and forth behind me from time to time. And so when we can't get the support and the positive energy from the people in our lives, we have other resources available to us.
That's right.
Then also thinking, there was a time where I was helping any client who needed what I could do to assist them. Mm-hmm. And I found that some of them was just pouring energy down the drain. Yeah. They weren't people that I felt energized and engaged with as I worked with them. So we talk about firing doctors and firing people in our lives. I found that I fired a lot of clients.
Right.
And now I get to pick and choose who there's a good energy flow with, that I'm helping them, but there's a symbiotic relationship where I'm enjoying that and I'm not feeling drained at the end of the time working with them. So there's a couple different ways that shows up, and we do have the power to make those decisions.
Yes, we do. And working with oncology patients, they are literally looking at their into their life in their face. They're in fear, they're in anxiety. And I could say, do I really want to work around that? Do I really? Because that could drain the life out of me. The people who come to see me, no matter what stage they're in, they still have this beautiful life force for the best part. They are still in the fight. They still want to know. And they're so fun. A good visit is we laugh and we cry. You laugh and you cry if you can laugh and cry with your doctor, you're getting deep and you're getting to places that you can help.
I love that. I just got shivers.
Yeah.
On that.
It's an honor for me to be able to work with people when they have their life facing them, not just other things. Now I work with heart disease and everything else, because all of it is important. All the 7 pillars are important. We got to keep them going. But these terminally ill patients, what does terminal mean? And helping them to know how far do we fight? Someone to fight to the last breath, Susan, and I meant it with them. right? They're not ready to give up. We keep them comfortable. We do, but others really, really just want to know what are the right steps to take. So it's a privilege. And like you said, we should not let anybody take the life out of us, but guess what? They really can't. That's us.
Yes.
If they're taking life out of us, it's that we haven't learned how to handle it, do it. And so that's been a very good learning. My patients have taught me a lot over the years to not let them suck the life out of me, because I'm giving them energy, but I'm teaching them how to do it.
Yes.
Teach them. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So do we have one more pillar?
Yeah. Spiritual. And I leave it for last because you don't have to be facing a life challenging crisis. You don't have to be that. Your quality of life goes up to a 10 when you feel connected to something greater than yourself. So meditation, listening to music, something. So I ask my patients the question on their questionnaire. I say, do you have a spiritual practice? And I say spiritual, not religious. I say spiritual. Some will come back and say, I'm Catholic and I do my rosary every day. And I say, or I follow the rules in the book, or, I'm a Baptist and I do all these. And I said, that wasn't my question. Do you feel connected really? And that you can find that connection within your day anytime you want. Do you have a practice, something that you can do that immediately lets you feel God, spirit, Buddha, whatever their belief system is, that you can feel God? And if you do, and not just hope you're doing all the right rules, if you have that ability, no matter what happens in your life, you can tap in and know that you're going to be okay and it's all okay. And if you don't, then I help them with what's best for that person. What is their existing belief system and how do we get there? But Susan, when you feel a spiritual, if you've ever felt it and you ever know it for real, not just I hope it believes and I have faith in it, but no, you know it, you felt it and you can tap into it, everything gets better. Now the rest is mechanical stuff that I say, let me figure out all that while you're working on the real healing, which is having that spiritual connection.
Yeah. And for me, and I've spoken about this so many times, my spiritual connection is being in nature.
Yes.
It's one of the things that had me move from San Diego up to my 5 acres. I'm in the upstairs of my barn. My house is across the driveway. I look out and I see trees and leaves and squirrels. And again, I'm with my own personal animal tribe. But when I walked the Camino de Santiago 5 years ago, is 5 weeks of just my feet on the ground.
Beautiful.
To go 500 miles. And I can tell you, Dr. Worden, I did not feel half the time like my feet was even touching the ground because I felt so connected. I felt connected with the land, with the air, with, the sky. And that's my stored memory bank. Whenever I can't get out, the weather is bad, whatever that might be, I can go there.
Perfect.
And I can connect with that and know that my world is bigger than just me.
That's exactly right. And, I tell my oncology patients, the ones that have survived and thrived, they were given 2 weeks to live and it's been 8 years later and they have a great quality of life. They were not afraid. They found they're not afraid to die and they're not afraid of cancer. When they can let go of that, they have cancer, but when they're not afraid of it and how they let go of all the fear is the connections that you're talking about, Susan. Yeah. When they find that, it doesn't matter. Their family's going to be okay. They're going to be okay. It's all okay. It's all good because you know it, you can feel it, and you know it. Yeah. And then they survive and thrive. It's those spontaneous remissions, right? And we've got great cancer. I work in the metabolic world where I work with traditional oncology. Sometimes we add it on, sometimes we do it instead, but hyperbaric oxygen, ketogenic diet, repurposed drugs. So we have great new therapies that we can do with cancer patients. And it's exciting, but I know no matter how good we are at all these things, if they are in this stress response, they feel alone, they're in fear that cortisol is going, I can't get them 100% better.
No, when I was speaking about my husband and my mother who were ill simultaneously, he had acute myelogenous leukemia and was told he had 6 weeks to live at the diagnosis. He lived 9, which was pretty amazing given the circumstances. But his outlook was so beautiful, and his feeling was either way I win.
That's right.
My mother, who had the cancer of the colon that had spread to her liver.
Yeah.
She was angry. She was fearful. She didn't have a good prognosis anyway, and she passed within about 6 months of the diagnosis. But going through the process simultaneously with them and seeing the difference in the way that they lived those final days and weeks and months was huge.
Yes.
It was a real huge life
changer.
And
it's an honor and blessing for you, because there was a lot of learning for you, right? Of this, of human nature and fear and guilt. And, but, you know, I've had the honor of being at the bedside of many patients. You know, they've wanted me there because I've been through the journey with them, and I know what they want. Sometimes their family's too much in drama to make decisions to do this. And I'm saying, we all agree this is what they wanted, and I help make those decisions for them. But it's such a blessing and an honor for those that had lost those negative emotions, and the beautiful spirit that you feel and see at that last, once they've taken their last breath.
Yes.
It's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yes. We could have a conversation about that.
Yeah. Another whole conversation, right?
It's a whole other conversation. Yes, it is. And I can say without a doubt, Dr. Worden, it has been a blessing and an honor to me and for our viewers to hear your passion as a messenger, your passion with your mission in the world to give people the health care that they need to live a vibrant life for as long as they can and they desire. Yeah. So thank you so very much for being with us today.
Well, I appreciate you having me and you sharing your personal stories, Susan. That's what people need and like to hear, you know, to know that it can exist and everyone can have a great quality of life. And I think the message is, just because something's common with people around you doesn't mean it's normal. And please check in with yourself. Things caught early are much easier to deal with than end stage, like with your mother, right? It was progressed. It had progressed. And with your friend,
that she probably had it for about 1.5 years.
Yep. Yep. And with your friend. So, you know, that's don't ignore the symptoms. Don't turn off the fire alarm, and don't just take a bunch of supplements and think that it's going to fix everything. Yes. We've got to find what's causing those symptoms. But first is you got to recognize it and not push it off.
Yeah. So, be self-aware, which is one of the pillars that you were talking about. That's right. So in the show notes below, we will have contact information. Okay, great. On how people can reach out to you and how they can get that ebook that's soon and around the corner.
Yeah. Yes. And they will be able to get, for most of my pharmacy on my website, supplements that I have approved. So if they're wondering, because we get that question a lot, where am I going to get this? I don't want to go through all that trouble. So know if it's on mine, I've vetted it. So that may help some people, and the pricing should be absolutely in line with anything else that you're looking at, but I can vouch for the quality. And please, you know, I'm going to do more YouTube, all the things that you're doing, Susan, and education. So I've got a team. We're about to do all that. So please follow me, and hopefully I'm going to continue to give good information and help us.
You absolutely will. And for all of my current followers and people who are just watching this, please subscribe to this channel and find out more about the different messengers that I'm speaking with. And it's just it's enlightening on so many different levels, and how we support each other and lift each other up for force in the good.
That's right.
To be a force for good in the world. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me. And your listeners are so lucky to have you. What a beautiful spirit and force that you are, and knowledgeable.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.